Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that keeps us turning the page. Today I am chatting with Joselin Linder, the author of The Family Gene, a moving account of Jocelyn's family's mystifying and unique family gene. As Linder traces her family's struggles with this genetic legacy, she delves into personal stories, scientific exploration, and medical ethics. Her story is both harrowing and hopeful as she tries to turn her deadly inheritance into something positive that can help not just her family, but others afflicted by rare vascular and lymphatic conditions. Hello, Jocelyn. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure. Today's Q&A will be a little different than others in Elena Meets the Author because while Jocelyn is an accomplished author, having published 7 books and countless articles in the Times, the New York Post, and other titles, she's also my writing coach. I first met Jocelyn in 2021 when I signed up for an online writing class during COVID and won the lottery. I got Jocelyn as my writing teacher and have never looked back, nor have so many other students at Jocelyn's that I've gotten to know through the years. So today, Jocelyn, while I want to discuss your fascinating memoir, I also want to talk about your career in writing and as a coach. How did it evolve? And your latest project, an exciting new subscription-based platform for writers called Prose Playground. First off, though, let's start with The Family Gene. Jocelyn, will you please read the introduction?
Yes, I will. I would love to.
Thank you.
Okay, so when I was 16 years old, my dad sat me down in the living room and told me he was very sick. My mom was away and my sister had recently left our home in Columbus, Ohio for college in Connecticut. "What do you have?" I asked. "I don't know," he answered. He looked terrified. "Then how do you know it's bad?" I asked sincerely. My dad had been complaining of fatigue. I remembered him fainting the summer after a family vacation, but he chalked it up to getting up too fast. Otherwise, he was a tall, healthy-seeming 44-year-old man. He didn't look pale. He wasn't running a fever. "I want your mother," he said. I didn't know what else I could do, so I called my mother and told her to come home. 5 years later, on September 25th, 1996, my father succumbed to his illness. After he died, the surgeon who assisted with the autopsy described his organs as practically fused together. They had been pressed so tightly against one another by countless liters of fatty lymph fluid that they had basically congealed. Doctors had only ever encountered this illness twice before, in my dad's 55-year-old grandmother, who'd passed away in 1955, and in his 34-year-old uncle, who followed her in 1961. No one drew a connection between the 3 illnesses until 2 years into my father's decline. In the years that followed, several of my family members experienced similarly strange symptoms. After tests revealed a complex system of swollen veins throughout her digestive tract, my 30-something sister was told by her doctors that she was a ticking time bomb. The same year, my father's first cousin lay in a coma after a vein burst in her brain. It took 3 years before she could walk and talk again. At a routine checkup, another cousin was told that she needed a liver transplant as soon as possible. I wasn't spared. When I was in my 20s, my legs started to swell. Every time I went to the doctor, I received ominous news, from reports of extreme liver blockage to increased quantities of wayward fluid, much like my father's, deposited where it should not be, deposited within my body. In my 30s, I was plagued with questions about my reproductive capabilities. Not a single medical professional could explain what was causing such terrible complications in an otherwise healthy family. My father's illness was unique in the medical field, and it attracted the attention of a Harvard geneticist who has spent the last 21 years trying to figure out what was killing him and if it was killing us. Together, we discovered that my father's body was reacting to the expression of a genetic mutation, now more commonly called a genetic variant, that seemed to have occurred only a few generations earlier, a private mutation. Private mutations are genetic variants found in a group of related individuals. For one of the first times in human medical history, my family is allowing medical science to witness a founder effect, a new mutation passing to subsequent generations during its fifth generation, instead of hundreds or even thousands of generations after the initial mutation of the gene. Medical genetics has given my family a way of addressing our illness. We now understand the gene and its impact on our bodies. For us, this means hope and the chance to change our fate. Medical mysteries like these are rarely solved. The fact that we've made so much progress in 17 years has a profound significance that is not lost on any of us. My family has an opportunity to weed a deadly gene out of existence, to use the power of medicine to do something that humanity has never before been presented with the opportunity to do. But nothing is certain. Our story is the story of science, its shortcomings, and its miraculous capabilities to change the world. It's the story of doctors on a quest to map a gene and understand it. It's the story of our gene, the lives it claimed, the lives it has changed, and the future of genetics.
Thank you. As a writer, did you always know you were going to write this story, or did you need some prodding?
I remember somebody suggesting that I write this book and me saying, but it's just my life, like really having no sense of it as something compelling, right? Even though now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I was kind of interested in what had happened. But yeah, it was one of those.
Wow. Amazing. Your memoir is so well researched with plenty of complex scientific information, yet your voice is conversational, not too highbrow, often funny. You make hard to understand material much easier, especially with your use of relatable metaphors, like how you describe how veins and arteries work by talking about the Lincoln Tunnel at rush hour. How challenging was it for you to translate all this scientific data into language your readers could understand and enjoy reading?
Thank you. It was really important to me, actually. And that was one of the main focuses I had in writing the book. I was very, determined when I I actually spoke to a lot of genetics researchers at universities because I wanted the language to be explained to me. And then I wanted to be able to translate it for, I actually, in my head, my reader was a 17 magazine reading, like 16-year-old, like kind of myself at the age when my father was first becoming sick. And I was like, I just had no idea any language to explain it. One of the things my mother had written, my father was an editor of a medical journal, and one of his people on his staff had put together a book of all of his editorials from that magazine. And my mother wrote the introduction. I remember she called it The Loneliness of a Rare Disease. And the idea that somehow, there is something about not having a name for something that can feel very isolated in that way. I was really fortunate because we had this team at Seidman Lab at Harvard that had already put together all the charts of everybody. And Barbara McDonough, who was an amazing, miraculous human being who I love so much, put together these binders for me of everybody's medical charts. So I had my great grandmothers, I had my great uncles, and I had my father's. And those included, my uncle had spent weeks at the NIH, that my Aunt Joni had kept his chart. I think, my great Aunt Joni was the wife of the second victim of the gene. And she, I have her still as a resource, and she's, in her 90s, and she's also an amazing person who kept all this information, even though when she had two little kids when her husband died, and she went to the doctor and said, is this genetic? And he said, I think they used the word hereditary at the time. And he said, it's definitely not hereditary. Like she locked it into her brain. She's like, it's not hereditary. But I think a little part of her had questions. So she kept all this information about my great uncle, and the weeks he spent at the NIH, she had all of his medical charts. So weirdly, I had a lot already handed to me, which was really cool.
How old was he when he died? And
he was
Joni's
34.
husband.
He was 34.
So it's suspicious, right? And I can't remember who was it exactly that drew the first connection that this was hereditary.
It was Aunt Joni.
It was Aunt Joni.
Yeah. And it is a little bit hard to say looking back at it now, because I think that genetics was a very short subject in medical school at the time that my father was in medical school. But, like nobody was talking about it in terms of medicine. Like now we're so fortunate that it's become such a central part of what we know about our bodies. But at the time, but at the same time that I say that, my father knew his great uncle, right? He actually saw him at the hospital. So these questions sort of came up in the writing of the book. Did he know more? My Aunt Joni's son, who was very close with my father, he suggested that he thought my dad thought maybe he had what his father had, which was something that I didn't know about or put in the book because I didn't know what my father thought about what he had. I just knew he never mentioned it to me, and didn't seem to know anything.
I mean, it really was. Your book is definitely part mystery thriller. In addition, definitely. So with your family's genetic variant, you've had to grapple with a lot of profound thoughts that others might not have. For example, you say on page 88 that the worst, it turns out, is always the thing that you feel before the worst happens. Can you talk about that?
Thank you for bringing this part up. This was a thing that I still bring up whenever I get afraid. Like, I always think everything is worse in the anticipation of it. I think that we can talk ourselves into such terror and panic in advance of the thing actually happening. Like we can, because the number of things you can sort of imagine are much bigger. And so I think one of the things I learned in this terrible time, I mean, it was a horrible time when I was in college, but somehow you find a way to sort of cope, like you're coping. I remember, and I'm sure anybody who's dealt with a disease or an illness has heard that, people saying to them, "Oh, you're so strong," or "You're so brave." And you in your head are like, I don't know, because the other option is don't get out of bed, or what are my other choices, right? Being so brave is just, I have to get through this. So you somehow, things like anger tap in, or things like, even just like, have to go to work today, have to get my stuff done. So you just kind of, when the terrible thing is happening, you can survive it. So I always think it's much worse to feel the fear than it is to like just live it, right? So that's why I always think, fear is sort of a wasted emotion right now for a lot of people. I think it's kind of useless.
Yeah. Also, when you talk later in your book about the Huntington's disease, where you don't even know if you're going to get it, you might or you might not.
Right.
So why doesn't help you, right?
Exactly.
To fear
adult
it.
onset genetic diseases are sort of this weird, and so at the time I remember I was about 19. My dad was really sick, and I was going to school in Boston. I was at Tufts University, and I took a class called psychology and genetics, I think they were calling it. And it was, so they were bringing up Jane Fonda, for example, whose mother committed suicide. And I think there were like 3 other people in her family, maybe her grandmother. There was like all these suicides, and they were talking about mental illness as part of, that situation that she dealt with. And then she brought up Woody Guthrie and Arlo Guthrie. So Woody Guthrie died of Huntington's disease when he was in his 50s. And Huntington's is one of these adult onset genetic diseases that, it took us a really long time, like 20 years ago is when we could first say, "Oh, yes, you have it," right? It hasn't been that long since we've been able to say to somebody, you're going to get this illness. And, Woody Guthrie, so Arlo Guthrie sort of grew up, maybe he's going to get it. Maybe he's not. It's 50-50 chance. And that was just his life. And I don't know him, but I think about that. And I thought about that at age 19. If they're unable to map our gene, I'll be a person going, maybe I'm going to get this, maybe I'm not. And I'm going to have to just kind of see what happens. And that is an interesting, I think that did bring up this idea of fear. And am I going to just spend my life catatonic and in fear? Or am I going to just live my life? This is my life.
Exactly. You end with, "Our bodies are wondrous. Perhaps that's all we ever need to know." What do you hope readers will take away from your story?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we are so fortunate. There's so much happening in the world right now. And I know that our understandings of genetics is like just changing at this incredibly rapid rate. I was just interviewing a researcher who's building synthetic genomes, and which are going to be both terrifying and amazing, right? Because they're going to actually help us solve a lot of genetic illness cases. And this idea of being able to sort of compare side by side our genomes and figure out what's going on in our bodies is sort of an amazing reality that's coming. So I think that that's the thing, is this idea of hope, like this idea of like maintaining is sort of like this hopefulness, because even in our case, so, when I was 19, I was going to be like Arlo Guthrie and have to grow up and not know if I had the gene. But soon after that, they did map our gene and it was on the X chromosome. So I knew I had it. I knew my sister had it because men pass girls X's and my dad only had one X because he's a man. So we definitely have the gene. So we knew that. And then that situation was taken care of. I knew, and I could, size up my monster and I could sort of deal with it. And then the next thing that happened is the Seidman lab mapped it to a gene that's the same gene that causes asthma. So one of the suggestions that somebody had was, what if they put us on asthma medication? There's a pill, really common. It's not over the counter, but a really common asthma pill called Montelukast, which is like Singulair is the common name for it. Everyone knows it if they've ever had asthma. And it's a protein reuptake inhibitor, meaning it impacts the gene. So it will stop the gene from expressing, sort of theoretically. So they put us on that pill 20 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And they then tested it. And so they put us on it and then they tested it in mouse models and it works. Right. So you're kind of saying like, I'm doing so well and I'm so optimistic, but I think I'm cured. It's not, nothing's 100%, but like, I think we have had an incredible, like great strides in how we're able to sort of deal with genetic diseases. And the fact that my family got so lucky that we could have a pill already. Nobody has to make us a pill. We can take a pill that already exists and it's serving our bodies to sort of stop the gene from expressing. So the hope, right? This idea of hope. Yeah. You and I have a good friend who recently passed away, who was diagnosed and told she had weeks. She was told she had 3 months to live. And she started meditating. She changed her entire outlook on her whole life and she lived 5 more years. And so as far as I'm concerned, like those, like you get, and she had 5 great years. Like she didn't spend those 5 years in bed terrified.
No, she was a ski instructor in wherever she was in Colorado.
Yeah.
She was running marathons.
She went to Utah and ran marathons. Like, yeah. So I feel like that's how you do it, right? You like, okay, we all have something like our lives are sort of, mortality, like our deaths are imminent, right? That's all of us, every single person on this planet. And if we sat around thinking about that, I don't think it would serve us. But I think what serves us is this idea that our lives are finite and therefore we can enjoy them. Like we can be here now and enjoy what we have.
Great. That was good. Thank you. Now on to your writing in general. I want to know how you got into writing to begin with. And please, can you touch on some of your earlier books, like Have Sex Like You Just Met and The Good Girl's Guide to Living in Sin?
Well, thank you for bringing those up.
Quite a switch from the family gene.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yes. So that's a great question. I moved to New York when I was I was 29 and I took a writing class, actually, a Gotham writing class. And which is where I met Elena, which is where we met. So I took the Gotham writing class and I just had like a great experience. I met some really cool people and the teacher was really positive. And, I loved how his energy and how he made all of us feel like we were doing something that we could keep doing. And I really think about it like, because I was working in film and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but I had worked in film for a long time. And I felt like, okay, I was in production. I was like, I was the person who would like make sure that everyone had food on set and, if they needed light bulbs, I would order them. Like not camera bulbs, but like just light. That was me. I was like, I was kind of that person, the point person for stuff. I'd been doing it for so long and I liked it, but it was like, I didn't love it. I was the kind of film, I was like in film, but I didn't even like the Godfather. I had never seen The Godfather. People are like, you can't work in film and have never seen The Godfather. And I was like, well, maybe I don't belong in film. So I was kind of like in that space. And I liked storytelling and I'd always loved to write and took this Gotham class and I met these people. And I really feel like we formed a writing group. Like we kept meeting the same night near the same spot where we'd all met. We just kept going. And now 20 years later, I'm still in this writing group. I'm still, people have shifted, but everybody from that writing group, that original group, almost all of them moved into careers in writing in some capacity. And one of them became an editor at Elle. She has a book coming out in a year, 1 year from now. She has a huge book coming out. Already optioned, like everybody and then another person has a Modern Love published. And, everybody from that original group sort of went on to work in writing in some capacity. So I think there is something about an intention and then a community that bolsters, like that sort of helps with that intention. So I think, it is really like those things kind of came together. So the other thing was I lived in New York. Like I said, I was working in film and I had this, the sort of like funny story about getting my first book published is I was at a party. I had a crush on this guy and he invited me to an event to help him plan an orphan fundraiser, like a fundraiser to help orphans in Nepal because he had been traveling in Nepal and the whole story. He wrote a book about it. I showed up at the orphan party, to plan the fundraiser for the orphans. And I met this woman and what was so funny is it was like 15 women and this guy. And it reminded me of the scene in Indiana Jones where we're all blinking, I love you, like on our eyelashes, like on our eyelids when we're, because we all just were there because we all had a crush on him, but we're planning this orphan fundraiser. And so I met this woman and we started to talk about, we were laughing about how we were just like in the group of girls that have a crush on this guy because he was a writer and he would post his journeys to Nepal and all these things. So she had a crush on him too. And I said, and I think I made a joke like, oh, I don't really date anymore. I just live with people. I just move in with them. And I'm like, oh, you'll do. Like, you're my roommate. We'll just date, and she thought that was really funny. And she said, would you ever want to write a book about that? And I was like, okay. And she said she had just been talking to an editor who had this book idea for a book about cohabitation and moving in with your boyfriend. And it's like an advice book. And do I want to write it? And I said, sure. I said, okay. And so she sent me a bunch of book proposals. And I would say that within 3 days, I got her a book proposal back. Like I went home, I think I worked on it at my job as a, coordinator because I had a computer and I would just sit there and work on it. And I got it done really quickly and I sent it back to her and she liked it. And so she said, I have to pair you with another writer because you don't have any background in this, but I can get somebody from Bridal Guide. And I said, okay. So she paired me with another writer. And that sort of launched this writer for hire career. So I had a few books come out sort of with this co-writer, Elena Maurer. She and I published 2 books together, The Good Girl's Guide to Living in Sin and The Have Sex Like You Just Met, which were those 2. And then I think I just kind of started to do it by myself.
And then how did you end up teaching at Gotham and becoming a coach?
Because when you're a writer, there's a lot of downtime, right? Like you have a project. And even though a lot of my writer for hire books, I would sometimes have 2-week, I'm not even kidding you, 2-week deadlines where they'd be like, you have to write this book. I'm sitting on my desk right here. I wrote this book in 3 weeks and it's a book of lists. And I actually really think this is such a fun book if you for a sitting around doing nothing book. It's called Best Laid List. I don't even know if you could still get it. And it's by Dee Dee Claremont. Dee Dee was my dog and Claremont was my street. So I think that's like your porn name. But anyway, Dee Dee Claremont was the name that they put on the book. I remember I had to write these itemized lists. So if you think about just time-wise, you have to come up with so it was like, forget the hair of the dog, hangover cures that work, right? It's like fun book list for women, right? That type of thing. Right. So I had to come up with 10 things to cure your hangover or whatever. This one's make your eyes pop, like a makeup tip, right? So, and each of these things require a minute or two so I figured out time-wise, because I had to write 300, I think she wanted 365 lists or something for every day of the year.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, if I researched each beat and I said each beat was 1 minute. And so each list was 10. I did the math on it. And I was like, I won't be able, I'll have to work 24 hours a day to get this book turned in. So I put it out. Facebook was new at the time. And I put it out on Facebook. I was like, does anyone want to write a list? I was like, I'll give you a free book if you'll write a list. So that 20 of them were written by people on Facebook. But anyway, it was crazy.
So even there, you're working with others. You're forming a community.
It's true. I'm very into that. So yeah. So I forgot your question.
The question was then, how did you end up working at Gotham?
I think I was always interested in working for Gotham, not even as like a career, but more like I just was so grateful to them. And I thought that my teacher had been so great. And I was like, I think I could do this. And I just feel like it would just be a good way to like sort of pay it back and like, get a chance to sort of pay it back. So I had been reaching out to them ever since my first book came out. I was like, hey, you guys were my, the reason. And it's hard to know. I don't know if they just ignored it. They're really busy. They're like they're not a very hands-on resource when you're working for them, but they're great. I have nothing but good things to say about them. And then finally, when The Family Gene came out, they did respond. I think each book that came out, I'd be like, hey, I have another book out. Can I come interview? And I think they were looking for somebody at the time. So she brought me in and I was hired and it was great. And I just loved it it's so funny. I'm going today to meet with one of the people from my very first ever Gotham class, who I'm still like in touch with all of those people from the first class. So it's cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So from being a writing coach on to your latest venture, Prose Playground, this online platform for writers. How did that thought occur to you to launch it? And tell us exactly, what it is.
Yes. Thank you for bringing it up. So Prose Playground is like a writing community. And it sort of happened a little bit by accident because I think I was still teaching for Gotham. I'm actually still on staff with Gotham and do stuff for them on occasion. But, I think it had just started after the pandemic, I had this wonderful group of people, including you, who I just felt like were taking my classes over and over. And it just felt like, well, why can't we just keep doing this? So we had done a couple of classes, like we'd spent like a year, just doing classes without Gotham. And I was like, this is great. And I don't mind it. And it feels like it's working. But then it also felt like what Gotham, some of the things that these other writing programs have are like a platform where people can turn in work and things. So anyway, I thought that was initially the thought, is like, it'll be like a platform. But then the person I was working with on the platform, who had also was a former student who had taken my classes, felt like, you're a community builder. What if you made it like a writing community? And I just thought immediately it just all clicked. I was like, that's exactly what I want it to be. So it's a free writing community. Anyone can join it. And there's all these resources that are free to access. There's like, I think there's one called Writing Resource, or like, I think it's called Writers Resources or something. And there's like we call it Brag, Bitch, and Complain, which is like the section where you can post if you've been published or if you've had a lot of rejection or just frustrations with anything in writing. It doesn't even have to be publishing. So there's all these sections that are free on the site. And then there are like the paid sections, which are the other parts of it.
I love just even today, or whenever you recently posted it, the thing about Modern Love getting in touch with you or getting in touch with Gotham. And so you posted that. So that's like a real insider thing, because people can pitch to Modern Love. They're now looking and they mention Gotham, and you wouldn't know that. So that's in your writerly resources section.
Right. So that's like a free thing. And so the idea, and it's not just me posting those, like, another guy, Mark Jenkins, he posts all the time. Like, he'll be like, oh, this writing contest is coming up. It's just kind of a way to share prompts and stuff that are happening, things that are happening, calls for submissions that you might happen to notice, but somebody else didn't notice. You put it in there. And so, the dream is like, we'll eventually have tons of people in this program. Right now we have 154, which I'm like so happy about, but like eventually
because you only
like,
launched it.
Yeah, it launched in December, like late December, right before Christmas. We were like, have to launch before Christmas. But so it just launched. And then, and so now we've got 154 people. And the idea is like, hopefully down the road, people will almost use it like we'll use it like a social media site that's fun. Like it's not political. It's really just for writers about writing. And even if you're not sure if you're a writer, but you're writer curious, you're just kind of interested in that, it's a great place because it's just easy and you can participate as much or as little as you want.
I think part of stepping back a bit, part of the reason I loved taking your classes was because there was a community. And I loved the fact that I was with other writers, because writing is we've talked about, it's so solitary. You're always doing this on your own. And I know there are a lot of writers who have no problem being motivated, but I'm not one of them. And I like having I like knowing that there's these other people who are struggling too, and we're all in it together. And this whole community that you talk about with your writers group that you're still meeting from Gotham, however many years later. So there's also going to be a writers group within Prose Playground,
Right.
right?
Yes. There is, yes.
How does that work?
Yeah. So there's basically like the writing community is like the thing that I think is like the best, because I agree with you. Like being solitary and writing is not for me. And I don't think I would have written anything without my writing group. Like even, at the time that I sold my first book, which was The Good Girl's Guide to Living in Sin, I was already meeting with a writing group, and I was writing all fiction. I was not at all writing nonfiction, but then suddenly I had this book opportunity, and my writing group, I turned in chapters, right? That was one example. Like I turned in chapters and so they gave me confidence, because part of what we talk about is like this positive feedback is also designed to make us feel like we can do this, like this is a possibility. So I love that about community. And then the writing group in particular, which is what you just asked about, is a subscription writing group. And nothing like what I kind of realized is like there have been times, our writing group turns over, we'll add new people to it every now and then if somebody leaves. But like, writing groups are hard to come by. And our writing group is particularly strong, but that's because I am very much in charge. I'm not we're all equally like going for it, but there's like, I really take it so seriously because I am aware that if I didn't have it, I would not ever write. Like my writing career would be gone. And I'm still very much a writer, as much as I love teaching writing and I love being part of the writing community. That's my main thing, is I want to be writing. So yeah, writing groups are just such a great thing, and they're so hard to come by. And once you have one, they're hard to keep going. It's hard. Somebody's got to really care or like make it their whole priority. And a lot of people don't really have time. Like they want to show up and be in a writing community, but they don't have time to like organize it and make sure everyone's there and keep it going and make sure that all their needs are met in the group. Like they don't have time they're like, they have 1,000 things to do. So I was like, this seems like such a hole in the market. Like there are so many people who want one, and where do you get one? So I was like, this will become a subscription writing group program where you can join. I can fit you with a group that's already existing. You can do it for a month, see if you like it. If you like it, you can stay with that group. If you want to try a different group, we can move you to a different group. So it's what I'm calling a curated writing group, because the other piece of it is that everybody in the group, even if you're a brand new writer, you go through just a short, like half an hour, it's a sort of a class on peer review and how to peer review effectively. So you're not in a room full of people who don't understand the rules. Also, my rules are really specific, so you have to follow them. And there's a moderator in the room who's there to sort of make sure you're following the rules and make sure everybody else is too. So your work is safe. Everybody's nobody's stealing from each other. There's sort of like a whole bunch of ground rules that really make it something very special.
How does it actually work? Do you have to submit your work? Because I've never been in a writing group. I've just taken your writing class. Do you have to submit work every week, everybody in the class, or you take turns?
Great question. So this one is going to be designed so you're submitting once a month, probably, maybe twice, depending on how big your group is. But once or twice a month, you'll submit work, and then the rest of the time you'll read work for the other people in the group.
Yeah. Okay. So, great. Yeah. Okay. Well, lastly, is there anything else that you want to tell us about Prose? Any other thing that you're planning on adding, or is that it for the moment? proseplayground.com. Come look at it.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Just go check it out, because it's still growing. So like, honestly, like I'm just now in the process of sending out a message to most of the community members just to say, is there something that we're not doing that you want? Because we're still sort of evolving and building it. So I hope there's a lot. Oh, we have these amazing seminars. We have a seminar coming up April 24th with a New York Times editor, Peter Catapano. He's the op-ed editor for like 20 years at the Times. He's going to tell us how to publish in the Times. I'm hoping to get one of the Modern Love editors to come too. Last week, we just did an AI seminar with Wiley, which is one of the big 5 publishing houses, and it was the team that is developing their AI guidelines for writers. We're going to post that discussion, and I think there'll be a paywall, so it'll be something like $10 to listen to it. But it was fascinating discussion, just with these 2 incredible brains talking about, what AI is, what they're doing with AI in terms of the publishing world, which is a whole,
Wow.
animal that we should at least look at, even though it seems kind of terrifying. It's something to at least pay attention to. So these seminars are amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on that's really cool and
It's
fun.
great. It's really good. I'm glad you've done this.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I think Jocelyn's genetic family history is fascinating and her memoir well worth reading. I also think Jocelyn's positive outlook on life is something I want to emulate. And all you writers and aspiring writers out there, take a look at Prose Playground. It provides a community for writers, which isn't so easy to find, as well as offering a myriad of writerly resources. And it's just fun to peruse. That's it for today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave the podcast a review on your streaming service of choice. See you in 2 weeks.